Welcome to the Minute of Terror channel. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Write us a comment about where in the world you are listening to this story. The Hitchhiker on the Deserted Highway. My name's John, and I've been a trucker for over 20 years. Hauling across the highways of the U.S. is my life. I've seen it all. Storms that swallow the road, wrecks that chill your bones, and even shadowy figures you swear you saw but try to forget. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to that night in August, out on a lonesome stretch of I-40 in the middle of New Mexico. It was around 2 in the morning. I was coming off a delivery in Albuquerque, and that part of I-40 was dead empty, like it always is at that hour. The full moon lit up the desert, and the radio in my rig was just static, no stations coming through. That's when I saw him, a guy standing on the shoulder, a beat-up backpack slung over his shoulder. No broken-down car nearby. No signs of life. Just him, arm out, thumb up, looking for a ride. I hesitated. Picking up a stranger in the middle of nowhere, especially at that hour, ain't exactly smart. But the guy looked harmless. Skinny, scruffy beard, maybe 40, with a cap pulled low over his face. Something about him made me feel sorry for him, like he was lost. I pulled the rig over and opened the door. "Where you headed?" I asked as he climbed in. "Anywhere down the road," he said, his voice rough, like he hadn't spoken in days, thanks to the Lyft driver. He settled into the seat, tossed his backpack on the floor, and stared out the window. He wasn't much for talking, and I'm not one to force a conversation. I fiddled with the radio again, mostly to kill the silence, but it was still just static. After about 10 minutes, the guy turned to me and said, "You know, I like roads like this. Empty. Makes you think about stories." "Yeah, gives you time to think." I said, not really engaging, but he kept going. "Want to hear one? A story that happened right around these parts." I shrugged. "Sure, go for it. It's a long night." He smirked, a crooked little grin, and started talking. His voice was calm, but there was something about it that sent a shiver down my spine, like every word carried weight. It was a night like this, maybe 5 years back. A trucker like you stopped to give a guy a ride. The dude seemed normal enough, but he had this vibe. They drove for a couple hours, shooting the breeze, until the passenger started telling a story. Said that on this very highway, a guy went missing. A delivery driver, the kind who'd stop in every small town between here and Flagstaff to sell cheap junk. They found him a few days later, down a ravine, throat slit. Nobody ever figured out who did it. A chill ran through me. I'm not one to scare easy, but that story sounded familiar. I'd heard it before at a diner off I-40. It was one of those unsolved cases that truckers still talk about over coffee. I glanced at the guy, but he was cool as ice, staring ahead like he was reading the weather report. "Damn, that's grim," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You heard that around here?" He chuckled, low and gravelly. "Heard it, yeah, but there's more. Want another?" I didn't. But I also didn't want to look like a coward. Plus, the silence of the desert was starting to creep me out more than his voice. "All right, let's hear it." He shifted in his seat, like he was settling in for a performance. "This one's more recent. Maybe 2 years ago. Another trucker, this one running loads to Phoenix. He stopped at a gas station for a coffee. Around 3 in the morning, while he was paying, he noticed a guy leaning against an old car, smoking. The guy asked for a ride, said he was out of gas. The trucker, soft-hearted, let him hop in. They talked a bit, but the passenger was quiet, just kept staring out at the desert, like he saw something the driver didn't. Next morning, they found the truck parked on the side of the road, empty. The driver was about 100 yards away, in some brush, with a knife in his chest. The passenger? Gone. Never found. I swallowed hard. That story I knew, too. It wasn't just diner talk. It had made the news. The case got some attention, because the cops had nothing to go on. No prints, no witnesses. Zilch. My grip tightened on the wheel, and I felt sweat beading on my neck. "Man, you got a thing for dark stories, huh?" I said, forcing a laugh that came out more like a choke. He turned his head, and for the first time, I got a good look at his eyes. They were deep, almost lifeless, but with a glint that didn't make sense. "I like true stories," he said. "And this highway, it's got a lot of Okay, buddy, think that's enough stories for tonight," I said, my heart pounding. "Let's just drive, yeah?" He shrugged and went quiet, staring out the window again, but the silence was worse. Every mile felt longer, and I couldn't shake those stories. The way he told them, with so much detail, it was like he knew things nobody should. After about 20 minutes, he spoke again, unprompted. "Want to hear one that's happening right now?" I froze. "Right now? What's that supposed to mean?" He leaned toward me, that crooked smirk back. A trucker, out on a deserted highway, stops to pick up a stranger. They drive for a bit, and the passenger starts telling stories. Stories about murders, people who vanish without a trace. The driver gets scared, but he doesn't stop the truck, doesn't tell the guy to get out. He thinks it's just talk, that the passenger is just some weirdo. But then, he stopped, and the silence hit like a brick. My pulse was hammering in my ears. "Then what?" I asked, even though I knew I didn't want the answer. He laughed, slow and deep. Then the driver realizes the passenger never planned on going anywhere. I slammed on the brakes, so hard the rig screeched. The guy didn't even flinch, just sat there, smirking at me. My hand was already on the door handle, ready to bolt, when he said, calm as ever, "Relax, John. Just messing with you. Keep driving." I don't know how he knew my name. I hadn't said it, hadn't introduced myself. My heart was in my throat, but I couldn't stop staring at him. His backpack was on the floor, half open, and I swear I saw something metallic glint inside. A knife, maybe. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking. "Get out now." He didn't argue, grabbed his backpack, opened the door, and stepped onto the shoulder. Before shutting the door, he looked at me and said, "Be careful who you let in, driver. Not everyone's just a passenger." I peeled out, heart racing, checking the rear view every second. He just stood there on the shoulder, fading into the dark. I drove straight to the nearest truck stop, about 30 miles away, and parked. Spent the whole night wide awake, doors locked, trying to make sense of what happened. The next morning at the diner, I overheard two guys talking about a murder that had just happened, not far from where I picked a guy up, a rideshare driver, found dead off a side road, throat cut. Cops had no leads. I haven't taken that stretch of I-40 at night since. And these days, when I see someone thumbing for a ride, I just keep driving. Because sometimes, the stories you hear aren't just stories. Sometimes they're warnings. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Until the next scary story.